Hello kind people of YouTube and welcome back to another video. Today we are, as always, going to take a look at the recent crypto news. As you can see, I got a couple stories already open, so let's take a look. And first let's briefly talk Bitfinex, because they had an as of yet unexplained disruption that a lot of people are very mad about. Not 1 hour ago, Bitfinex, the Hong Kong headquartered Bitcoin powerhouse, divulged on Twitter that it was fully aware that its platform wasn't accessible to some users. Yet minutes later, the shadowed crypto startup, one of the longest standing in the nascent industry, corrected itself, explaining that Bitfinex is offline to all users. This came straight out of left field. As this comment likely caused some traders to fret, especially those with large cryptocurrency holdings on the platform, Bitfinex remarked that funds are safe. Per their status page, the company's web server, trading engine, backend workers and WebSocket are all under maintenance. This comes minutes after the same page claimed that the aforementioned facets were in a partial outage state. In a tweet just released minutes ago, Bitfinex divulged that the issue, which remains unnamed, has been identified by its staff, and as such the Crypto Heavyweights developer team is currently doing its utmost best to resume full platform functionality, as you can see in the tweet here. Although this seems innocuous enough, many believe that once the exchange reopens, the market could see another bout of volatility following the sudden 8% gain that Bitcoin posted on Friday, to the chagrin of bears. On Twitter and Reddit, users speculated on the subject matter, and now they're just going into like a bit of the muttering on social media. We don't really need that. Ultimately, some people were worried that there was something going on here with their funds. It appears that was not actually an issue. But we cannot rule out an attack on Bitfinex at this point, and to my knowledge we do not have more information about what was going on here, but it seems like they're dealing with the situation, and in my opinion, you should never fully trust a centralized exchange of any type, or any exchange, even a decentralized exchange. If you haven't personally looked at the source code, you should never trust them fully. But in my view, Bitfinex is one of the more trustworthy cryptocurrency exchanges out there. I have made a pretty large number of trades on there myself, and I am not worried about the legitimacy of their service and the funds on the service right now. I have a reasonable amount of trust in them. Okay, this isn't really news. This is an article about a top 10 list by a magazine, but this article becomes so utterly ridiculous in the second half. I just have to read it with you guys, because I was reading this and I was just thinking, oh my god, they really published this article. They really did that. It's such a terrible article. We will see. This is from CCN, and it's called "This Magazine Ranked Ethereum the second best blockchain protocol. Bitcoin didn't make the list." And for the first half, they actually talk about the article, and for the second half, they go into essentially just... I don't want to get vulgar here, but in the second half, they're just sucking their own dick. And sorry about the language, I usually try to stay away from that, but that is what is happening here. And let's read the first half first, because they're mainly reporting on the actual facts, but this is tech news, but this is an opinion piece, and some of the arguments put forward here are, don't check out. The latest issue of Rising Blockchain magazine lists the top 10 blockchain protocols in their opinion. The list doesn't include Bitcoin. The 10 change protocols listed are those the editors believe bring the change to the world in 2019 faster than other protocols. At the top of the list is the Graphene protocol, on which EOS, Steem and BitShares are built. So keep in mind here, when we're reading the rest of this, they are not listing the best cryptocurrencies. They are listing the best blockchain protocols, the most promising blockchain protocols. So they are not saying that these blockchains are the best, that the cryptocurrencies have the best performance, or that the cryptocurrencies have the most adoption running on these. They are talking about the blockchain protocols. They are talking about a technical level here. So then it becomes just utterly clear why Bitcoin isn't included there. Because the Bitcoin blockchain was absolutely revolutionary at the time it was released, but in 2019 is completely outdated and has been overtaken by other blockchains from a purely technological standpoint. I'm not talking about Bitcoin's position in the markets here, I'm just talking about the underlying technology. It should be completely undeniable that Bitcoin, for how revolutionary and innovative it was, in today's market is the least interesting and least promising blockchain. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening second and third layer, but the actual Bitcoin blockchain is very, very basic and is very, very old-fashioned and is old technology. So of course it's not here. Which, why would they point this out multiple times? Anyways, let's read the rest. The ratings don't include much in the way of colorful explanations. Speaking of EOS, the magazine mentions that EOS has a transaction reversal mechanism via the arbitration concept. BitShares is listed before Steam, although Steam has arguably onboarded more users than most platforms one can name. BitShares, on the other hand, had a very rough year in 2018. BitUSD lost its dollar peg in a big way. For starters, overall BitShares has less than $250 million invested in it. Compared to EOS, BitShares almost shouldn't be in the top 10 at all. And here you just get to the crux. They have no idea what this list actually is. The author of this article has no idea what he's criticizing or talking about here. Because this, like I mentioned, this was a top 10 ranking, in their opinion, of the blockchains. Not of the cryptocurrencies and not of their place in the market. They were not looking at, like, they're talking about the market cap here. The market cap shouldn't even be considered if you're comparing blockchains. Because they're not looking at places in the market. They're looking at the actual blockchain. They're looking at the technology. So saying that BitShares having less than $250 million invested in it is a reason why it shouldn't be in the top 10? You don't understand what you're talking about. You just have no idea what you're talking about. And another thing here, it lost its dollar peg in... Once again, they're talking about price here, not about the actual technology. This is a technology ranking. Anyway, let's continue. Ethereum came in second in the rankings. Here, though, the list of decentralized applications listed is curious. And we don't really need that part. Let's read the second half, because this is interesting. This is where they're just self-flating. CCN is officially the most read blockchain news website. And notice, this second half is actually just as long, if not longer, than the first half. So they took this article, which is allegedly about this top 10 ranking of cryptocurrencies, of blockchains. And they don't even talk about the top 10 ranking for most of it. And they don't even mention all 10. They only mention the number 1 and 2 in detail. And then the second half of the article is just about how popular their own website is. This is insane. Okay, let's read this. I just thought this was so funny. The magazine, which is a 100-plus page review of all things blockchain from 2018, notes that CCN is the most visited blockchain news website, ahead of CoinDesk by at least 200,000 visitors per month. Now it gets funny again. CCN has actually grown exponentially since the data must have been collected. So, it wasn't enough to be declared the most popular crypto website by a margin of 200,000 readers. Instead, they just had to go, oh, but actually our own numbers say we're even more popular. Look, we're even more popular, guys. This is so funny and sad and embarrassing. And then an attack on these other websites. Seems it's about time for Cointelegraph and CoinDesk to stop claiming their #1 status. CCN is just angry. One thing we'd like to note is that CCN does not employ Tom Clancy. Tom Clancy is the author we attribute press releases to. Press releases and sponsored stories are not the type of work our writers need attributions for, as the publication is paid to host them. So that is because in the actual ranking, Tom Clancy was attributed as one of their most productive authors. Because, in case you haven't noticed, CCN is full of paid advertisement. They call it press releases or sponsored stories. But what it really is paid advertisement. You're reading advertisement for a lot of these things. And yes, they're attributed, but it's sometimes hard to see. And they're making a curious argument for why they're doing it here. I think they're doing it subconsciously. In the same way that some traditional businesses like real estate are required to post a notice in the newspaper, CCN allows blockchain businesses to submit their news for a fee. See the phrasing here? See how they're framing the fact that they are posting sponsored stories? They're comparing it to real estate being required to post something, thus planting this idea that they have to do this. They do not have to do this, of course. This is what they're doing to make more money, and it's a very sneaky business practice because, well, if you're disclosing it, then it's technically considered okay, but you still have to ask yourself the question, do you want to take your news from a news source where you can pay to post an article that advertises something and that looks like a news article? The news is clearly marked as a press release or sponsored story and attributed to Tom Clancy. Note here, what they mean with clearly is that here it would say sponsored story instead of news. So not sure how clear that is. I have been on the front page a few times and I started reading a headline and I thought, oh, that looks interesting. And then I saw that it was a sponsored story after I already had read the headline. After the headline already managed to get into my head, after the content of the headline already managed to get into my head. These websites will always try to defend these practices, but in my opinion, they are not very reputable. And yeah. And then this oh my god, this is just so funny and just so sad and embarrassing. This is just such an embarrassing article to write, but I just want to read this last paragraph as well. The note also says that Yashu Gola and Pedro Febrero are our top writers. We'd like to point out that all our writers are our top writers. The majority of our writers are routinely sought after by competing publications. Sure. Fortunately, our compensation rates are better. Sure. And clearly our platform for exposure is superior. Do you see what I'm talking about here? This is just such an embarrassing case of autofellatio. And I just thought it was so funny. I'm sorry, this isn't even really news, but it's just I want you to keep articles like this in mind when you're reading something from these major crypto pages, because I want you to keep in mind that all these crypto pages, even the biggest, and CCN appears to be, if not the biggest, at the very least, definitely one of the biggest, that these are run by essentially children. This is not professional journalism, because professional journalism does not write articles like this. This article is a complete joke, and also attributed as news when at best it should be an opinion piece or op-ed. This is just utterly embarrassing and ridiculous and unprofessional. And you see a lot of this in the crypto space, and you see it with the biggest pages in the crypto space. And I just want you to keep this in the back of your head whenever you're reading crypto news. Keep in mind, these are not, most of the time, they're not even trained journalists. Most of the people working for these websites are not trained journalists. Most of these websites do not have an editor, or if they do have an editor, that is not a trained editor. That is not someone who worked for a major newspaper before going over here. But this is amateurs. And I just want you to keep this in mind, because I'm not trying to say that these websites aren't doing a lot of good work in getting the news to us. There's a lot of very dedicated people working for all of these websites, including CCN. I'm not trying to say that they are not. But just keep in mind that these are all amateur operations, and they're very active, very dedicated amateurs, but it's still amateurs. And let's get to the actual news. In Argentina, you can now buy your transport card with Bitcoin. This is an interesting mass adoption moment, and we haven't seen a lot of this yet. Argentinian state public transport card SUBE can now be topped up using Bitcoin, Cointelegraph in Spanish reported on Friday. Alto Viaje, I mispronounced it, I'm so sorry. Viaje? I have no idea. A platform for adding money to SUBE cards has partnered with Bitfinex, which provides blockchain-driven financial services to businesses. As a result of the partnership, the SUBE card, or Super card I guess, can now be funded using Bitcoin. And we don't really need the rest of this. This is essentially all we need here. I just wanted to let you guys know about this because most of you are not in Argentina. I'm not in Argentina. But every small move in this direction provides precedent for the rest of the world and provides more mainstream exposure for crypto. Just the fact that when you're topping up your public transport card in Argentina now, you see Bitcoin as one of the possible payment options, that will be the first real exposure for a lot of people to Bitcoin, the first real world exposure for a lot of people to Bitcoin, and a lot of people will think, I can actually use this to pay for things. This is similar to how in the last couple of years, PayPal started popping up in a lot of like physical real world places as a payment option. Once you have this permeation, once it becomes commonplace, a lot more people will adopt it because they will have it in the back of their head as in the back of their mind as one potential payment method for a lot of different things. So this is a small but important step, and we will see a lot more of this in the future. And last but not least, Mauritius is licensing crypto custodians soon. Mauritius will soon license digital asset custodians as part of its plan to create a fintech hub in and for Africa. In an announcement on Friday, the island nation's Financial Services Commission said that after publishing draft rules in a consultation paper in November 2018, the framework has now been finalized and will come into effect on March 1st. In effect, the framework sets out the rules for a license that allows the holder to provide custody services for digital assets. The move makes Mauritius the first jurisdiction globally to offer a regulated landscape for the custody of digital assets. The Prime Minister of the country said, "In revolutionizing the global fintech ecosystem through this regulatory framework for the custody of digital assets, my government reiterates its commitment to accelerating the country's move to an age of digitally enabled economic growth." And we don't really need the rest of this article again, but I want you to remember this when you're thinking about Africa, because Africa is often ignored, especially in the crypto world. But there's actually a lot happening in Africa. A lot of large crypto firms are pushing money into Africa. A lot of people are developing crypto solutions in and for Africa. And I think Africa will emerge as one of the most important markets for crypto. And it remains to be seen which countries in Africa. And Mauritius is here really framing themselves in a very open, very preventive way. Not preventive, but they're looking out for the future. They're framing themselves, positioning themselves in a way that they might be the go-to place for a lot of these things. And there's a lot of untapped potential in Africa. And Africa is also a continent with a lot of unbanked and underbanked people who might be first integrated into global finance through the crypto revolution in the coming years. So do not forget about Africa, and also do not forget about South America, and do not forget about Asia. And I'm not just talking Japan, China, Taiwan here. In general, there are a lot of markets that we don't think of as peak markets in the traditional financial world. A lot of countries that are considered at best developing nations. That will become a lot more important when crypto further revolutionizes and democratizes and provides everyone access to global finance. When we will all be on much more similar footing, all of these countries will really emerge as completely different from right now. And that is one way in which crypto will really change the face of the world, in which crypto will do a lot of good for a lot of people who previously did not have this kind of access before. And that's why I try to not ignore these countries on this channel. I have to tell you guys, I don't know a lot about a lot of these countries. But whenever I get news like this, I do want to share it because I do think it's important. And I think we should never just focus on just a couple countries or just where we personally live. That is a very limiting way of looking at the world. Our planet is huge, has a lot of people, a lot of countries with a lot of unique situations. And I don't think it makes sense to only look at Central Europe, the United States, maybe Canada, maybe Japan, maybe India, maybe China. There's so much more in the world. And yeah, I want to talk about all of them. And as always, thank you so much for watching. If you want to read any of these articles yourself, the links are in the description. If you want to follow me on social media, links also in the description. If you enjoy my channel and enjoy my content, I would really appreciate if you supported the channel. I have a Patreon link as well as some other ways to support the channel in the description. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll be back with you guys with another video very soon.